Halifax, Nova Scotia. A picturesque city with a population of slightly over 420,000 people, this historic maritime city manages to feel both hip and historic, and is culturally rich thanks to its generations of proud, passionate locals who wouldn't want to be anywhere else. It was Halifax's natural harbour, the second largest in the world after Sydney, Australia, that first drew the British here in 1749. Today, Halifax is filled with great restaurants and bars, many of which are located along the waterfront boardwalk. There are also green spaces such as the public gardens and Point Pleasant Park. Museums and religious architecture are also abundant. The city highlight for visitors, however, is often the Halifax Citadel historic site. Out-of-town options include places like Peggy's Cove, Mahone Bay, and historic Lunenburg. It all starts, however, at the city's centrally located downtown dock. Halifax has one of this region's most scenic sailings, with the city sloping uphill on the port side or left-hand side of the ship as you're making your approach. Ships often use George's Island in the harbour as a bit of a turning circle, either upon arrival or departure. This unassuming island was occupied by military forces for 200 years from 1750, acting as a key fortification protecting access to a key British station. If you look closely at George's Island, you'll see a lighthouse. Built in 1917, creativity didn't seem too key to its naming, as it's simply called George's Island Lighthouse. When cruise ships arrive into the port of Halifax, they typically dock at either Pier 20 or 22, which is separated by the Museum of Immigration at Pier 21, which we'll cover later. Upon arrival, you will have multiple amenities available, including local visitor information staff with maps, access to Wi-Fi, public restrooms, taxi services, and hop-on hop-off bus services. Canadian dollars will be the currency here, and there is an ATM available right by the port. You can also find ATMs and currency exchanges around the city, and most places will accept credit cards. Please note that whilst some places around the port may accept US dollars, it will be at a 1-for-1 exchange rate. Halifax also has local bus services, and there's several car rental options located close by too. Once arriving into Halifax, there are many great sightseeing opportunities within walking distance from the port. Right next to the cruise port is the Canadian Museum of Immigration at Pier 21. Affectionately dubbed as Canada's front door, Pier 21 served as the entry point for nearly 1 million immigrants between 1928 and 1971. It is now a museum where the immigration experience is recreated and contains several innovative exhibits, including a holographic multimedia presentation. A highlight of the museum is the personal stories collected from immigrants, offering insights into their quest for a new life. A little further along from the port, you'll find yourself on the Halifax Waterfront Boardwalk. This waterfront path runs for almost 2 miles or 3 kilometers, making it one of the world's longest running boardwalks. Not only does it contain lots of great shops and restaurants, but it is also where you'll find the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic. There is no better place to immerse yourself in Nova Scotia's rich maritime history than at the Maritime Museum. From small craft boat building to World War convoys, the days of sail to the age of steam, the city's connection to the Titanic to the Halifax explosion, you'll discover the stories, events, and people that have come to define Nova Scotia and its relationship with the sea. Now, speaking of the Halifax explosion, the Halifax explosion was a maritime disaster in Halifax on the morning of the 6th of December 1917. The SS Mont Blanc, a French cargo ship laden with high explosives, collided with the Norwegian vessel SS Imo in the Narrows, a strait connecting the upper Halifax harbour to Bedford Basin. A fire on board the French ship ignited her cargo, causing a large explosion that devastated the Richmond district of Halifax. Approximately 2,000 people were killed by blast, debris, fires, and collapsed buildings, and an estimated 9,000 others were injured. Remnants of the explosion are still seen at St. Paul's Anglican Church. Opened in 1750, this is Canada's oldest Protestant church and the burial site of many colonial notables. It played a pivotal role during the 1917 Halifax explosion, as the vestry was used as a makeshift hospital. Evidence of the damage done to the building can be seen in the still broken explosion window and the debris embedded above the memorial doors. Designated as a National Historic Site, St. Paul's remains an active church. Free guided tours are often given, so just check with the local tourism information staff for timings. Speaking of history, especially for first-time visitors to Halifax, the Halifax Citadel National Historic Site is a can't-miss site for those looking to spend their day in and around town. Erected between 1826 and 1856 on Halifax's highest hill, it still dominates the city's skyline and is Canada's most visited National Historic Site. At the site you'll see its dry moat, barracks, and guard room on tours around the site, and there's a multimedia presentation every 15 minutes. The Citadel is also home to the Army Museum with its excellent exhibits and war art gallery. Take a moment upon arrival or before departing to take in the views. Just beware it is a steep walk up from the Citadel, and you could take a 5-minute taxi ride from the port if you prefer. Once atop the city's prominent hilltop, however, you'll be very close to Spring Garden Road. This is a hub street for shopping and dining options, and it also houses the city's public library as well as the Halifax Public Gardens. One of the oldest formal Victorian gardens in North America, this city oasis first started in 1753 as a private garden. Its layout was completed in 1875 by Richard Power, former gardener to the Duke of Devonshire in Ireland. Gravel paths wind among ponds, trees, and flower beds, showing off a variety of plants from all over the world. The centerpiece is an ornate gazebo-like bandshell erected in 1887 for Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee. It can be found by walking up the right-hand side of Spring Garden Road. However, if you're looking for a larger natural space, perhaps Point Pleasant Park might be a better option for you. Point Pleasant Park encompasses 186 wooded acres of walking trails and seafront paths and is immensely popular for walkers, joggers, and dog walkers. It was originally one of the city's early fortification sites, and there is still a massive round tower from the 18th century found within the park. It is approximately 1.5 miles from the port, and it can be accessed by walking along Yonge Avenue, where many of Halifax's premier residential homes can be viewed. But speaking of getting a little further away from the downtown area, let's now take a look at some options outside of the immediate city of Halifax. Whilst there are plenty of options in the downtown area of Halifax, it is also one of the best ports in this region to get out of town and do some exploring in the surrounding areas, including the famous Peggy's Cove, Mahone Bay, and Lunenburg. However, the first site that we consider out of town is the Fairview Lawn Cemetery. Whilst technically still in Halifax, it is located on Windsor Street in the city's north end, 3 kilometers or 2 miles from where the ships dock. Now, it might seem strange to promote a cemetery as a sightseeing spot, however Fairview Lawn is no regular resting place, as it is home to 121 victims as a result of the sinking of the Titanic in 1912. One of the common gathering places in the cemetery is in front of this gravesite, J. Dawson. Now, for those fans of James Cameron's film Titanic, you'll remember Leonardo DiCaprio's character's name was Jack Dawson. Now, whilst fictional, it was an ode to this particular J. Dawson, whose final resting place was here in Halifax. From the cemetery, you can branch out a little further afield and see more of the greater area of central Nova Scotia. When heading southwest from Halifax, 3 popular options for a day visit are Peggy's Cove, Lunenburg, and Mahone Bay. Peggy's Cove doesn't need a lot of introduction for the most part, as it is home to Canada's most photographed lighthouse and is a Nova Scotian icon. The town itself, located 30 miles or 48 kilometers southwest of Halifax, is relatively quaint and is home to a small wooden church, a number of houses, and salt-bleached jetties. The lighthouse itself attracts over 750,000 visitors annually, with peak times being between July and August. In addition, you'll also find here an art gallery, visitor centre, gift shops, and a lobster shack. Next up is Lunenburg. Located 42 miles or 66 kilometers from Halifax, this remarkably preserved town has a colourful past and some very colourful buildings, a combination that earned it a UNESCO World Heritage Site designation. The British founded Lunenburg in 1753, and the town also has German, Swiss, and French influence. The continuously maintained waterfront, along with the Fisheries Museum of the Atlantic, as well as the dining, shopping, and touring options, make Lunenburg a favourite coastal Nova Scotian location. And the third option out of town is Mahone Bay. This picturesque seaside town in Nova Scotia is known for its stunning scenery, rich history, and vibrant community. It is perhaps most famous though for its 3 19th century waterfront churches, St. James Anglican, St. John's Lutheran, and Trinity United. While small, the town is filled with unique boutiques, art galleries, cafes, and craft shops. There is also a small museum and nearby nature trails, so if you are already heading to Lunenburg, a stop in at Mahone Bay is a nice addition to the day. So, as you can see, there is so much to see and do both in town and further afield, making Halifax a highlight port on a Canada-New England cruise itinerary. To help you get off to a good start with preparing to visit, here are a few extra ideas. We mentioned earlier that there is a hop-on hop-off bus in Halifax. You can normally get tickets in advance from your cruise ship's shore excursions desk, or alternatively, they are sold inside the cruise terminal and the bus comes right by the port. Now, whilst Halifax has a thriving culinary scene, a visit also allows you to try an Eastern Canadian iconic sweet treat, Cal's Creamery. There are a couple of locations, however, we like the one that is located right along the waterfront boardwalk. Also, if you are planning on a cruise visit to Halifax, but haven't planned your dates yet, cruise ships normally visit starting in April with the season running through until October. We would recommend waiting until at least May, with the reason here being that opening hours of many visitor sites, particularly the museums and historic sites, well, they have seasonal hours, with May marking the start of the summer tourism season. So you'll just simply find that many more places are open once the calendar hits the month of May, and typically places will be open for longer too. So there we go, that is our introduction to the city of Halifax, Nova Scotia and the cruise port. We've linked our cruise port page for Halifax down below if you need more information, but thanks very much for watching and enjoy your visit to Halifax.